Nosferatu. Not actually the worst, but you and I were both not as big fans of this as we thought we were going to be. I actually pre-gamed this movie by watching two pieces of Nosferatu media prior to. That was the original 1922 film, and of course, the Graveyard Shift from SpongeBob. And the Graveyard Shift set the expectations high, and I actually do think that watching the original Nosferatu did benefit me a little bit in watching this. I think that it made me like it a little bit more than I would have if I went in blind.
Yeah, I mean, I have to ask you, what were your expectations for this going in? Because I expected this to be the best movie of the year, and I think that's why my expectations weren't hit.
Yeah, I was expecting it to at least be up there, like top five territory. Eggers has hit it out of the park on his last two for me, with Northman and of course The Lighthouse is both of one of our favorites, I think. But this was more of a return to the bitch, I guess, with the kind of slow burn period piece, just weirdness of it too, and I was hoping it wouldn't be. I was hoping for something that would adapt this story into something a little more high paced, a little bit maybe a little more depth in the characters. There are a lot of issues I have with this movie. I still enjoyed it fairly decently, but I want to hear your theater experience. Talk me through it.
Yeah, I had a matinee showing a couple days ago, and it was pretty quiet, and I was expecting that. It's a 1:30 showing on a weekday, so all is well. But I didn't know if it was the movie or my theater, but it was so loud for dialogue scenes. I had to plug my ears. It was almost unbearable. So when Nosferatu was like screaming at the screen, it was painful. So I don't know if that was just my theater or not, but made it uncomfortable. Um, and I think uncomfortable was kind of the theme of my experience as a whole. This was a movie that I had super high expectations for, was let down. My ears were hurting me the whole time. My eyes were hurting me the whole time with some of the gruesome imagery and the extensive horniness that is this entire runtime. I don't know. Nosferatu, it's good, not great. And I was expecting great from Eggers. So,
It's
last grade, C plus, movie grade, B plus.
hmm, um, it's funny that your theater was too loud. Ours was much too quiet for me, at least. Morgan and I got a bucket of popcorn heading in, and we like felt a little bad eating it. It was so quiet the whole time, and this was the most packed showing I'd been to at the AMC Classic in Bloomington. This theater is always just completely empty. Last time I saw more than maybe five people in a theater was for Barbie, and it was pretty packed in there for Nosferatu on Friday night, which was cool to see. And it felt like everybody was just insanely quiet, not because they were like respecting the movie, but because it felt awkward not to be. They also did forget to turn off the lights in our theater, which this is a super dark movie. And so we couldn't see for the first, I think they fixed it after about 30, 45 minutes. I mean, this theater is awful. Like it is so bad. But as the movie unfolded, I would say just more and more realizing what it was going to be for me. And I think that when I kind of wrapped my head around this is the type of movie that Robert Eggers is making Nosferatu, I started to have a little bit better of a time with it. And I'm going a blast grade, probably still just a C for me, and then movie grade I am going to give an A minus.
Yeah, and it's not a fault of there are a lot of qualities of this movie that are great. Like I think the acting is pretty good top to bottom. We can have a couple conversations, but I think the leads are really good. The cinematography without a doubt is fantastic. I think the sound design, the set design, obviously the makeup for Skarsgård is a highlight here. All of those boxes are checked. I think where I'm really struggling is the script. I feel like this thing moves at a snail's pace. I think it's lacking character depth, and when we get character work, it's kind of dumped on us in the last 30 minutes, and wasn't really a fan of that. And I think that's what's missing here in Nosferatu.
I think there's a lot of things that could maybe fix this a little bit. The character depth is very annoying, I will say. I felt like I had no reason to buy into any of these characters. We get like really one scene before Nick Holt gets sent off on this like mission to sell a house, which great. Like we're working with a with a Black Plague era real estate agent. Nice. This is a guy I'm rooting for. But I understand that this was boring. I think this could have been a lot better if it was 30 minutes longer, as you usually say, or 30 minutes shorter. I think this is another one where either way, the character depth wouldn't have bugged me as much if it was 90 minutes, and the characters could have been more in depth if it was like 2.5 hours instead of it's sitting around like 2:05 without the credits, I think. Which props to him for not making this a 3-hour movie. I think he very well could have. I also think that Nosferatu as a character needed to be designed a little scarier or something. I wasn't feeling the presence in this like I usually do, not just from Skarsgård, but from I feel like Egger's like evil characters in the past that we've seen. Like Willem Dafoe in The Lighthouse feels like more of a menace to me than Nosferatu does in this movie.
I think he certainly has his moments, but I wanted more of the less is more concept. I think we're revealed what Nosferatu looks like too early on, and they really do slow roll it. But that second and third act, you see the stash in full force. Could you tell it was Skarsgård? If I didn't know he was cast in this movie, would have had zero clue.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known either. Um, God, dude, the mustache is a problem. I think the mustache made it funny because people were laughing when the mustache was on screen. Do you think that Nosferatu's character is better designed in this or the original?
The SpongeBob classic.
Yeah,
I I still like the new version. I think that it's pretty. I do think it's haunting. I think there was just we needed a little less of Nosferatu, a couple more shadows.
the shadow is intriguing. I want to circle back around to this. The other thing I said though is I feel like yes, we needed less actual Nosferatu, but I feel like we needed more of Nosferatu. Like I feel like I didn't get enough of Nosferatu being like a true villain in this. He was creepy and like being weird all the time, but I needed like another attack scene or maybe two or three more shadow scenes, something like that.
I couldn't agree more. I feel like the that's what was driving me nuts with the pacing of this. We get so many Depp crash outs, like she's in those dreams and she's spazzing out. I think if we eliminate one or two of those scenes, because they do start to get repetitive, and we replace it with a scary, tense Nosferatu scene, like when Nicholas Holt goes to visit him or when he's on the ship. I think if we get one or two more of those to create that tension, create those stakes, I think it could be a lot scarier.
I agree. And instead, we get a movie that I texted you right after. This is just boring. And it was actually so boring that I thought of a new a new segment I want to try out on the pod for the next few weeks. At what point in this movie would a fart sound effect be most effective?
All right, well, since it's your segment, why don't you give me your take?
I think so. When Holt's like cornered in his room and he's seeing like the door like swings open from Nosferatu's force powers or whatever, I put it in right there when you pan to him looking like afraid. Just I think the theater laughs their asses off. I think it's perfect.
Um, I, I think when Nosferatu comes to visit Lily Rose Depp and he's giving the decree of after 3 nights I'm killing your husband after that bomb drop
Oh
vanishes.
man, I love it. I love it. Did you find this movie like scary really at all, or just uncomfy?
Uncomfortable. I think the visuals are. I expected it, but the visuals were great. I felt like Skarsgård, the close-up shots when they would like flash his face with a loud noise. It was more uncomfortable. But that's kind of Egger's game. He's not a big jump scare man. Like that's not his pocket. I think he did his job.
Yeah, I guess so. And we've kind of ripped into this a little bit to open it up, but there are a lot of good things in this movie. Like you said, the sound design stands out, but the plague for me was a big highlight of this. I think that the way that like the Nosferatu becomes a plague is such an interesting concept, and one that is very lightly touched on in the original. But I mean, since it's a silent film, you can't really get like too into it. But I think that like the horror surrounding the world, like when you're thrust into this period, is really cool when examined through that plague lens. I thought that was a great way to further like explore this story.
I think we should have had more of that, to be honest with you. I think it was most engaging when there was a battle between the doctors and Aaron Taylor Johnson convinced that there is no Nosferatu, it's just this plague. I think if we had more dialogue surrounding that, let's have Nosferatu crash or move to this town, and the plague comes at the end of the first act. And that is the big pain point for the next two acts. Convincing everyone that this vampire is here, he's real, and we need to destroy him.
I like it. I again, there are a lot of ways that I feel like this movie could have been better, and I think that is another one of them. But speaking of that first act, if you're Nick Holt going to Count Orlok's castle, are you like at what point are you turning back?
Um, I think I'm heading back when the horse carriage with no one in it stops at my feet and opens up. You know when the horse comes to pick him up
Mm-hmm.
right before the castle? I think I'm going to turn around there. I think I get past the inn and the freaky dream I had about the vampire um, assassination, basically. I think I get past all that. I think when I get to the castle, I turn right around.
So funny thing, in the original, instead of the horse and carriage just being empty, it's Nosferatu in disguise. Count Orlok in disguise is like, I don't know, driving the carriage, I guess. And as soon as they like get to the castle, he just vanishes and the door opens up and then he's inside and he's like, "Oh, hi. He finally got here." Um, I'm not sure why that change was made. I think that would have been. There are some funny pieces of this movie. I know it because people were laughing in my theater. I wasn't the only one, and I think that that could have worked as like a little tension breaker early in the movie.
Well, do you think Eggers was trying to incorporate that goofiness with the mustache, with the voice? Because I do feel a little sense of camp hidden somewhere in here with those choices.
There's got to be. Just because we know from his past work how talented he is at like achieving the tones that he wants to, I feel like he has to be aware of that, right?
100%. I think those choices were deliberate, and this is a rip off of Dracula, and I think it is supposed to be a little campy, and I think
It
that's
is.
where he wanted to incorporate it.
What do you think is the best ripoff of all time? Is it Nosferatu?
No, I think it's the Avengers. Um, they totally stole from Justice League and made the greatest team up movie at that time in 2012.
Hmm. Um, my honorable mention out there goes to Ratatouille. I don't know if you've ever seen that one, Ratatouille ripoff, but Friday the 13th for me is the best ripoff. I think the watching the progression of the ripoff as it grows through the thir- I think 13 movies now they have is fascinating.
Rip off of what?
A Friday the 13th. Oh, ripoff of Halloween.
Okay. Okay.
I think I read somewhere that like the script writer himself, like as a pitch, was like, "Oh yeah, it's it's a ripoff." Um, concept of Nosferatu shadow. Does it work? Is it like fleshed out enough to work in this?
I thought so. I felt like it was some of the creepier moments of the movie, but it only works because of Depp's performance. Like the body contortions, the dialogue, her face acting. It's all raw. It's uncomfortable. I think it was probably the scariest element of this movie.
I agree. I think that it was the scariest element, and I think that it was shot amazingly, but I feel like I just needed like two more scenes to show really how this shadow is working, and it because he interacts with a lot more than just Depp's character it through the shadow, and I wanted a little more explanation. I thought it was a really cool concept and an opportunity for some really cool symbolism. I haven't really unpacked that yet,
No, help me out here
because
because like does Nosferatu as a character have supernatural powers? He teleports, he's able to like read minds and basically command people to do whatever he wants. Does this vampire have superpowers?
I surely right.
How does that work? Come on, Edward Cullen didn't get to do all this.
Yeah, true. Edward Cullen can also stand in the sunlight though, without like I don't know, becoming the mummy from the mummy.
God, that was an uncomfortable final shot to say the least.
Yes, it was. I the whole concept just it feels a little half baked. From I guess you're right. Maybe the script is the biggest problem of this. Nosferatu also like controls hounds and all. There's so much going on in this movie, and as slow as it is, it also feels like a lot is happening all the time. Do you know what I mean?
100%. Do you? I feel like with Nosferatu, if you're gonna do a remake or a retelling of something like this, you have to go in knowing that your audience doesn't understand or know the source material. There aren't millions of Steve Watts watching the original Nosferatu. We know about the SpongeBob character. That's it. So I think we needed the lore unpacked a little bit more. If you're just gonna throw a bunch of Nosferatu like Easter eggs at us.
I would agree, and the question I've been asking myself since I've watched this movie, and I hadn't given it a blast grade or a movie grade until on this pod, is because I keep on asking myself, would I rather rewatch the original or rewatch this? And it's
No way.
sad that it's a tough question for me. Because when I watched the original, I also didn't give that a grade because I don't even know how to grade that. Like, I mean, it's over 100 years old. It's cool that like it exists, and that we can still find it when it was just a shitty ripoff of Dracula, back in the day. And it's cool that it weirdly has like pop culture relevance through SpongeBob 100 years later too. But rewatching that, it felt like there was a true like soul to the movie, and it felt like the director was really trying to say something, or the script was trying to say something. And I think that was mostly about the plague, for that original movie. But when I come to this Nosferatu, I feel like it has all the problems that I have with the original, and instead of doing things differently, it just copies. It's so frustrating to me, and I'm still torn on the question.
Here is my thing with Nosferatu. It's all style over substance for me, and I feel like that is such a lazy argument to use for movies. I think that this is one of those rare exceptions where, for me, it is all style and very minimal substance. All of the value props, think about it: camera work, acting, lighting, set design, all of the like practical, tangible elements of a movie. The script, the storyline, the plot holes that we can point out, that's where it struggles. It doesn't hold up substance wise, story wise, and that's why it's frustrating.
And that's another thing I was thinking about while watching this movie was, okay, so this movie is gorgeous. It looks amazing, and like you said, the sound and everything is so great. But what is stopping me from going back and just watching The Lighthouse which has that same like visual flair from Eggers and everything, but a much better script, a much better like purpose driving the movie, and a better concept. I'm even gonna say. I don't know. I don't think this really deserves a rewatch.
No, and it's not even just okay. I guess maybe for The Witch, if you don't want to rewatch The Witch, I understand. But for Lighthouse and Northman, compelling stories. There are compelling stories paired with all of the other things we love about Bob Eggers. To your point, camera work, sound design, lighting, characters, performances, all the other good stuff. It gels all together. I have no intentions of rewatching this movie.
And I don't blame you for it.
Where does it rank for you? I'm guessing fourth of his movies.
Okay, I have The Northman at my one because just I love that movie so much. I rewatch that all the time. My number two is of course The Lighthouse, and I actually do have Nosferatu at my number three. I have a lot of the same complaints about Nosferatu I have about The Witch as well. And the tiebreaker for that for me is that The Witch is annoying because of the double V's. So I'll knock it down to the four.
Okay. I haven't decided between Nosferatu and The Witch for my four spot, but it goes Lighthouse, Northman, then I think I'm still going to say The Witch for now, and then Nosferatu, only because my expectations were so high for this movie. Like, do you still think he's the king of horror? Like, I think this kind of like knocks him down the pedestal. I know you weren't a Beau's Afraid guy, but after Beau's Afraid, you made a take that Astor fell off the pedestal of king of horror movies. I think that Eggers gets knocked down a step here too with Nosferatu.
I think so. I do think he shouldn't be in the conversation for a while now, but I don't think our like blast king of horror for those of you listening who don't remember is Jordan Peele right now, and I
No,
do
Mike
think.
Flanagan.
Oh yeah, you're right. I do think there is a new king of horror though, and I think it's just A24 as a whole. I mean, this movie was made for $50 million. It has a ton of big names and released on Christmas Day. I'm sure it's going to overshadow Complete Unknown, despite Timmy C's best efforts. And I think that this will pack the house. It's gonna probably get at least 300 mil. Like that's probably a conservative estimate here. And I feel like A24 horror as a whole has such a draw to it that it can make people come in and watch Beau is Afraid, which is 3 hours long. I think that it'll make people come in and watch Nosferatu, and you're gonna know, like, okay, this is gonna be some fucked up weird movie, but I'm gonna talk about it with my friends for an hour afterwards, and either make fun of it or talk about how scared I was or whatever. You have like actual modern hits like Talk to Me. I think the A24 has kind of a stranglehold on the horror like game right now, besides Shutter.
I don't think that's crazy. It puts people in the seats. And I hope that people listening, when we say, or that we're dunking on Nosferatu, a like different story than what we're seeing on the big screen, I feel like that's kind of like a lazy argument against what we're saying. Because if I look at my top 10 of the year list right now and try and pull out all the horror movies, I feel like there are a lot more that I'd watch rather than Nosferatu. You got Long Legs. If you want to put Civil War in that conversation, I'm cool with that too. Heretic. I'd even honestly, I'd throw Y2K in that conversation if you want to go horror
Mm-hmm.
comedy. I think all of those movies are better here, and those are original, fun stories, unique, different than the standard big IP story.
Yep, it's just a disappointment. I mean, I don't know how many times we have to say it, but would you like recommend this movie to a friend either?
If it's like a weird pocket because I don't want to recommend it. My mom's a big vampire movie person, but this is too stylized for my mom. And then for my stylized people, I don't know if they're going to be big on the Nosferatu elements. I feel like this is a weird niche market that we're trying to tap into, and I have a hard time recommending that.
Just to Willem Dafoe fans, I think.
I thought he was great. I
He
thought he was
was.
having a ton of fun here.
He was my favorite part of the movie, but I actually, my favorite that guy of all time is
First
Ralph
Omen?
Ineson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
First Omen guy. He was fun to see. Pleasant surprise.
Do you know who else he is?
No.
He is the Green Knight.
Oh, yes,
Um,
we've talked about this.
and he is also a Death Eater who's just like in a bunch of scenes standing behind Voldemort in especially the last two movies.
Oh, I'm going back to rewatch. You're kidding.
He's pretty young in it. It's pretty funny to see.
That is
Um,
sick. I think the only person that was miscast here, and feel free to push back, but I think Aaron Taylor Johnson was the only one that stood out like a sore thumb from this cast.
yeah, it's kind of a tough, a tough double up for him between Craven the Hunter and this. I didn't really like him in this movie. I don't know how you felt, but Morgan agreed with me on this one. I think Lily Rose Depp was viciously overacting for the last like 30 to 45 minutes of this movie.
Nah, I think that's a bit crazy. I like Lily Rose Depp. I do think Nick Holt went toe to toe and was the sneaky standout. Maybe because we're big Nick Holt fans, but I thought Depp was good. She's gonna get more work because of this.
She will, but I'll be interested to see what she's like under different directors. I really do. I don't know. Like when she and Nick Holt had the weird like fight and also
Yeah, the
weird,
fight.
yeah,
All right, let's get horny.
yeah.
Let's talk about it.
It's such a weird scene, and her performance in that scene was so weird that it was like taking me out a little bit. I was laughing.
I mean, okay, I went alone, so maybe that was part of it. Like, I didn't have like the uncomfortable laughs with my partner. Like, it was just an uncomfortable scene. So I think that it was done well. Like, if I was laughing or if my audience was laughing, I would have felt differently. But we were all having a really uncomfortable time during that.
would you
I thank God I
rather?
didn't see this with my mom. That's all I could think about the whole time.
um, would you rather go see this with Katie or go see Midsummer with Katie?
Ooh. um, that's a toughie. I'm gonna say, oh God, I'm gonna say Nosferatu. There's less packages,
Have you
less
seen
balls.
the picture of Nick Holt holding up the prosthetic?
No,
Oh my god, dude! Google it right now. Like live reaction on pod. Google Nick Holt Nosferatu prosthetic. uh,
oh,
Eggers gave it to him as a gift, and he's got it like framed. It's one of the funniest pictures I've ever seen in my life.
just just hanging out.
Yep.
Yep. I was expecting more balls on it in this movie. I really was. We had one
Did we get
shot,
any balls? I feel like no balls.
one shaft.
Oh god.
That's how they had to defeat Nosferatu. They had to squash his balls. We needed me and Goth.
Oh my god. Would you go see like a Maxine sequel if it was Maxine versus Nosferatu?
Fuck yeah, I would.
I would
Fuck
too.
yeah, I would. And it's directed by Ty West.
Yeah, of
Oh,
course.
I'm all in. I'm all in. Does
No,
this
it's
movie work if it's directed by someone else? Like, do you give it to Ty West and make it wonky?
I think that like a comedy version of this actually works with pretty much anybody. And maybe that's the route it should have gone. A more serious version though, it would probably have to go into like the hands of a
Ari Aster.
great
Ari Aster.
no
It would work.
no of like a great who was like, oh, this movie is like everything like it'd have to go to like a Scorsese or something and bring somebody who's not usually in the horror genre in to explore this, I think.
I also think James Wan could do something incredible with this, but he could do something incredible with like a box of Cheerios.
He could, yes. um,
That's the next James Wan movie, Cheerio.